following lesson is linked to Learning Outcome 1, Listening and Speaking. It addresses the assessment standard that requires learners to be able to recognize and challenge obvious emotive and manipulative language, bias, prejudice, and stereotyping, such as in propaganda and advertising. Hi, and welcome to our next lesson on your right to speak. In our last lesson, we looked at techniques that are used for making persuasive speeches. We learned that a persuasive speech can be used to help inspire people to change for the better, but that the effect of persuasion can sometimes be negative. If the effect is negative, we say that the person has been manipulated. In this lesson, we will see how emotive language is used to either persuade or manipulate. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to recognize emotive language, recognize whether emotive language is being used to persuade or manipulate someone. Persuasion and manipulation are very similar concepts, as both try to get people to do or believe certain things. However, as we said earlier, one word has positive connotations and the other has negative connotations. If you agree with what someone is telling people to do, and that the thing that people are being persuaded to do is in their best interest, then you would say that the speaker is persuasive. If you don't agree with the speaker, and the thing that he or she is trying to get people to do is not in their best interest, then you would say that the speaker is manipulative. Look at the following two situations. Which is manipulative? Which is persuasive? Our clothes provide fashion and quality at an affordable price. Other shops are for losers. Buy your clothes here if you want people to like you. Whilst both of these adverts are trying to get people to buy clothes from a certain shop, they are using different techniques to do this. The first advert is persuasive. It's trying to boost sales by pointing out the merits of the clothes from the shop. They are fashionable, of good quality, and affordable. The second advert is manipulative. It is playing on people's desire to fit in by trying to convince people that their clothes will help them to be liked and not be seen as a loser. Of course, this example of manipulation is pretty obvious, but you need to be on the lookout for more subtle forms of manipulation that try to influence how you think about certain products or ideas. If you are constantly on the lookout for people and messages that try to get you to do things that you don't want to do or that aren't in your best interests, then you'll be less likely to be manipulated. Now, whether the intention of the speaker is to manipulate or to persuade, one of the techniques that can be used is emotive language. Emotive language is language that intends to make people act emotionally rather than logically. Here is an example of emotive language. How does it appeal to your emotions, and do you think it is being used to persuade or to manipulate?
Every day, thousands of innocent creatures are murdered by scientists who test medicines and cosmetics on them. Petition against this horrific treatment.
This statement appeals to our emotions because we feel sorry for the animals, especially innocent ones. We are also encouraged to see the scientists as murderers. Such words as innocent, murdered, and horrific are emotive words with strong connotations that help to encourage an emotive response. If we support the idea that animals should not be used to test medicines and cosmetics, we would see this statement as being persuasive, and we would be encouraged to sign the petition. If, however, we think that certain scientific and medical advances can only be made if some testing is done on animals, then we may say this statement is manipulative. Now that we know what persuasion and manipulation are, and that emotive language can be used to do both, let's see how they work in the real world. Let's talk to Johan Abrams, a journalist with special assignment, to find out how language is used in this television program. Do you ever use emotive language on special assignment?
We have to write in a certain way in order to keep the viewer from dwindling or from switching off, from switching to another channel. We have to keep the viewers. So you have to be, with your language, you have to write in a certain way to keep the viewer. And emotive language, well, television is emotive. It's a medium of emotion. If you can't make people cry or laugh or feel something, then you failed in your task as getting your message across. So to get your message across, I'm all for using language in such a way as to keep people from switching off.
Do the people you interview ever try to manipulate you?
Yes, I can. There's a gut feeling to it as well. When people talk to you, and like I said, I described first in the beginning about people the various personalities that you come across. Most of the time they try to manipulate you. Most of the time they're not saying what really is the truth. They always try to manipulate the truth. But viewers are smart when it comes to that. They can see through people, and they can see when people are lying.
So, emotive language is a tool that is used, whether speaking or writing, to appeal to our emotions or feelings. As Johan Abrams has noted, emotive language can be used to make a story more interesting, get our attention, help us to relate to the people or issues in a personal and emotional way. But emotive language can also be used to manipulate the truth. Here is what Johan Abrams had to say about recognizing when someone is being manipulative and taking action. How do you recognize when people are being manipulative, and what can you do about it?
You need to let them talk, and the viewer decides. Eventually, the viewer will decide, is that the truth? So you let them speak, you pause, you ask follow-up questions, and eventually truth comes out. It always comes out.
So, we've been warned. When you think you are being manipulated, listen carefully, find out the facts, and ask questions to try and get a more balanced view, so that you can make up your own mind. Also, remember that emotive language isn't the only way that people can be persuaded and manipulated. You should also look carefully at what information has been included and what has been left out, and what the reasons for these choices are. So now that we know that emotive language can be used to get us to act in certain ways, let's have a look at some of the techniques used in emotive language by analyzing a real speech. At the celebration to mark the adoption of South Africa's new constitution, Thabo Mbeki, who was then deputy president, made a very inspiring speech about what it means to be an African. As you listen to an extract from this speech, see if you can work out how Mbeki has used emotive language to encourage South Africans to be proud of their heritage. Also, think about whether this speech is persuasive or manipulative.
This thing that we have done today in this small corner of a great continent that has contributed so decisively to the evolution of humanity says that Africa reaffirms that she is continuing her rise from the ashes. Whatever the setbacks of the moment, nothing can stop us now. Whatever the difficulties, Africa shall be at peace. However improbable it may sound to the skeptics, Africa will prosper. Whoever we may be, whatever our immediate interest, however much we carry baggage from our past, however much we have been caught by the fashion of cynicism and loss of faith in the capacity of the people, let us err today and say, nothing can stop us now.
How did President Mbeki use emotive language, and was this persuasive or manipulative?
That speech really makes me proud to be South African and proud of our constitution. So I would say it was persuasive rather than manipulative. Of course, someone who did not agree with Mbeki or the ideas he expressed may argue that the speech was manipulative. Were you able to figure out how emotive language was used in that speech? Let's take a look at a few examples. Here Mbeki is referring to signing the South African Constitution into law. He talks about South Africa as being a small corner of a great continent, to create an image for people of how South Africa fits into the continent of Africa as a whole. He also talks about how the new constitution is part of an evolution of humanity and that it reaffirms Africa's rise from the ashes. These words create powerful images in people's minds about how the new constitution shows that South Africa is a progressive, democratic country that has been able to rise above the legacy of apartheid. Using imagery is another powerful emotive tool, as it gets people to see things in their imaginations which the speaker wants them to see. In this part of the speech, Mbeki uses repetition to make his message clear that despite setbacks and difficulties, Africa will be at peace and will prosper. By repeating himself and using a similar pattern in all 3 lines, Mbeki sounds very sure of himself. Repetition is another technique for creating emotive language. If we hear a message often enough, we start to believe that it must be true. Mbeki also uses repetition in the last lines of the speech to reinforce the idea that nothing can stop us now. This helps to convey a spirit of optimism, that Mbeki truly believes no one and nothing can stop the progress of Africa. The pronouns that are used, we and us, also create the idea that all Africans will support what he is saying. The use of personal pronouns is another technique of emotive language. By talking about we and us, the speaker connects himself or herself to the listener and makes it seem as if they share common views. Words with strong connotations are used throughout the speech. For example, Mbeki makes a strong contrast between the setbacks, difficulties, improbabilities, and skeptics that Africa faces, and the fact that despite this, Africa will be at peace and will prosper. These are not neutral words. Instead, they are words with strong connotations that have been deliberately chosen to get an emotive response from the listeners. So far, we have seen that there are a number of techniques that can be used for creating emotive language, such as imagery, repetition, personal pronouns, and words with emotive connotations. These techniques can be inspirational, as in the following speech by Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Look out for them to make sure that the same techniques are not being used to manipulate you. To see if you can do this, it's time for today's task.
God says to you, I have a dream. Please help me to realize it. It is a dream of a world whose ugliness and squalor and poverty, its war and hostility, its greed and harsh competitiveness, its alienation and disharmony are changed into their glorious counterparts. When there will be more laughter, joy and peace, where there will be justice and goodness and compassion and love and caring and sharing.
What emotive language techniques does it use? Is the speech manipulative or persuasive? I hope that this lesson has shown you how emotive language can be a powerful tool in manipulating or persuading us to do, think, or feel in a certain way. From me, until next time, take care.